Here we go. That should be good.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you very much for the intro. And I will build on the inspiration conveyed by Sokrap in the previous presentation. But my aim is to convey some information about my country, about our space industry, and also to inspire some cooperation. Emerging space nations is kind of a buzzword. You all know that right now, but we call Latvia a space re-emerging nation. First, to remind you, what is the country I'm talking about? A little country right on the south to Scandinavia in the European Union, a small, beautiful country, which has quite a heritage in the space sector. We have 20th century scientists, and we have participated in 20th century space missions we are very proud of. And here I'm talking not only about the Soviet space program, but about the pre-Soviet scientists. For example, Friedrich Zander was from Latvia, and he really influenced the current space missions. In 2015, after all the crisis, we got back to space, and we became an European Space Agency cooperating state. In this role, we were quite successful among the 11 countries of the same status, which allowed us to update our status of the European Space Agency in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. So we were dealing really with space things. And then in 2021, we also became an associate member of the European Organization for Nuclear Research, so CERN, the Hadron Collider, and all these things. And here I usually mention CERN in this space context because our two communities are quite linked, and that would be anyway a nice thing to develop such cooperation among the key inspirational international organizations in science. 2021, we published the space strategy for Latvia for the next 7 years. And in 2020, we launched also our Latvian space portal, where you can find the directory of Latvian organizations. And I'll tell you about this a bit later. About the strategy for Latvia, what do we want to achieve? First of all, of course, education and skill development, because, well, everything is based on people. Then I will tell you about this later, but we are quite proud of our niche technologies. So we are planning, and we would like to develop this direction of our space sector to really enter in the large supply chain in cooperation with our neighboring countries, with other countries, or with large organizations. So we are quite open for cooperation, as the whole space sector is. Of course, scientific and engineering research and governmental services. So the government should also be a more active participant of our space economy. About our space portal with the directory of space organizations and also news and opportunities, and about the Latvian Space Office is found a link that you can see above. To be honest, Latvians have quite a modest culture. So our KPIs were maybe 20 times lower than the actual statistics of these portals, which means that emerging space nations are quite demanded and are popular. So we do have different visitors from all over the world. And this is something as a message to also our neighboring countries. We are not lost in this global space sector. And what are our space sector capacities? The approach to economy in Latvia is quite broad. We try to help organizations do whatever they want to do to be the enablers. And we have the same approach to the space sector. So we do not want, as the government, to say the industry what they should do. But it brings us the challenge, how do we talk about the space sector? So this is my approach. We have space infrastructure, we have space technologies, we work with space data, and we have space science. So more about this in more detail in the next slides. First of all, the infrastructure. We're very proud of it. We actually inherited the largest radio telescope in the north, so 32 meters in diameter, and also its brother telescope, 16 meters, which has been called Latvia's unfair competitive advantage. So we're quite excited about yes, both excited, and we didn't know about this object in the 90s. It was a Soviet spy object. And then we found it in the forest. We're quite surprised. modernized it, and now we use it for space exploration. We also have other telescopes. We also have a space center, and we have a planetarium. I will tell you about this a bit later too. We're quite proud also of our heritage and also innovation and scientific and metrology instruments. So we produce optical gyroscopes by fiber optical solution. Only 5 countries in the world actually produce gyroscopes the same as they do, which is quite unique. One of the 5 countries is Latvia, and right now they're developing a globally unique optical gyroscope. We also have success stories. For example, our time tagger innovator, Eventech, 70% of satellite ranging stations in the world are equipped with our technology, and it's also used for terrestrial applications, for example, for gravimetry. We're very proud of this company because they enabled Latvia's participation in the HERA mission to protect our Earth from asteroids. Also, of course, other companies, the examples, what you see in blue are just examples. We have more companies to these categories. Also, space environment simulation. I love all the space sectors, but I really like the concept of bringing space to the Earth. And I really like that we have these laboratories that we can simulate space environment using radiation sources, vibration, vacuum, everything you need. As far as we know, usually you have to stand in large queues to get your payload tested, and Latvia is more flexible in this, so we usually also welcome cooperation in this direction. Then talking about technologies, on the left you can see the Lunar Gateway, our second super cool success story, because a Latvian company, a thermal management innovator, they offer their pumping system for xenon-based propulsion module in the ESA's Esprit module in the Lunar Gateway. We also produce various energy storage and harvesting solutions. We have also smart materials for launchers, for example. Ariane is using it. We produce nanomaterials and heat materials for smart materials for heat distribution, which are applied both on the Earth and also are applicable for space. And in general, Latvian space companies are not space companies. We usually do business on the Earth and also help the space sector. So we have quite a broad approach. We also have large size 3D printing capacities in the country. And historically, we are also quite strong in electronics, photonics, and optics. These industries are quite strong on the Earth, but also define space. We produce electronic and electrical engineering systems. We offer hardware that support the space sectors. MikroTik, for example, is used by SpaceX. Photonics and optics, on the slide, you can even see that I don't have specific examples of companies participating in this direction of the space industry because we have really many of them. And event timing, again, I mentioned this in the previous slide, Eventech, that enabled our participation in the HERA mission. And what they do, they can extremely precisely measure the flight of time in picoseconds. So 0, and 000, hard to imagine, but very much demanded in the world. Space data and ICT. First, Earth observation is quite developed, and here Latvia has quite a competitive and convenient geographical position because our summers are very hot, winters are very cold, we have access to sea, we have fields, we have dry places and forests. So our applications are very adaptable internationally. So that's why we also export our Earth observation solutions outside of the European Union and adapt them to other climates. Also, we have different capacities and infrastructure, such as drones, to really support freely available satellite data, which sometimes lacks quality. So we do this service. And then space weather, like globally, the topic is growing, and Latvia really very much reflects this thanks to our infrastructure I mentioned before. So we do work with space weather data, and we observe solar radiation, which is linked. We have quite valuable software used for the space sector. In general, the IT sector in Latvia is very well developed and has been developing through years and years. And these are also the solutions have very good applications in the space sector. And here I'd like to draw your attention to quantum computing and these linked capacities, because we have world-class quantum scientists that are also preparing to have their role in the space sector. And then 5G. Latvia, in fact, was the first European country to start actual 5G-enabled military tests. We developed digital twins and actually plan to make Riga, the capital city, the meta city. And of course, the space sector, space data will have a very influential role there, and which means international cooperation will be needed and capacities will grow further. We hold various events for the 5G community, where we welcome the whole world here, quite large fora, especially for such a small country as Latvia, because the community is quite strong and also very much open to the space sector. And we're already talking about the 6G. Science and education. We don't have that many universities. So in this perspective, actually, 4 institutions are already very much involved in the space sector, each from their own perspective. This is Ventspils International Radio Astronomy Center, the one that has the radio telescopes I mentioned before. So whenever I need to know something about space, I usually call them and they explain everything to me. So they have very, very broad capacities and they cooperate with all countries. So the source of information is the University of Latvia, my alma mater, and they have various institutes dealing with, again, astronomy or geodesy, so space from different perspectives, upstream, downstream, whatever is needed. Riga Technical University, our very innovative and very challenging for students university, because they prepare really competitive students, also very much involved in the space sector. And of course, Institute of Electronics and Computer Science, and they're very strong not only in electronics, but also in Earth observation, so in general ICT. Again, I'm mentioning the thing that we are very proud of, but our Ventspils International Radio Astronomy Center, you see the 32-meter antenna on the slide. They also have the LOFR telescope, and they provide services, both scientific and commercial, for communication with satellites or deep space objects and deep space itself. They have laboratory science and education, and actually they were the ones that launched our first and only Venta-1 satellite for educational purposes, but they were the ones to really remind people of the space sector after the period when we a bit forgot about this during the crisis. The center, yes, it is located in Ventspils. This is a town of Latvia city closer to the west. And they have not only the infrastructure I showed you before, but also various centers for kids to really develop the new generation of STEM professionals or STEM enthusiasts. They have observatory, and they offer various services really internationally to help the European space sector grow, and not only European. We have another space city, Cēsis. There we are building a space education center to really create for kids a very pleasant and exciting memories in the childhood, to maybe influence their choice after they graduate their high school to become maybe space scientists or just scientists, because how you inspire science, I guess, through space is the easiest way. These students linked to the center, they have various educational projects. They're very good, internationally good in sounding rocket projects. And we can see a very nice response from school kids on space and such real technical projects. So this is something to share about. And a couple of words about cooperation environment. I should mention them because I represent the Ministry of Economics. And there are some things we're very proud of. We're rated as the second most competitive tax system of all the OECD countries, actually for the 3rd year in a row. So quite comfortable to do business here due to certain conditions of doing business linked to taxes or the infrastructure or ecosystems. We have also been rated as world's most startup-friendly ecosystem by Index Ventures, together with our neighbors Estonia and Lithuania. And in our case, this is due to stock option regulations and our tax system, and also because of connectivity, because we have various business centers and different science parks, and also locations in Latvia with different tax conditions that also promotes business in regions, not only capital in the capital of the country. And then human capital and strategic investments. We have quite a large IT expert tool. I remember when I had to choose my university many years ago, the most popular choice was IT. So really, we have the really relatively large IT expert tool, all welcomed in space. And also the same tendency towards the STEM education in Latvia, and we are working a lot on it. And here, this slide is like the religion of our economy. The European countries have a smart specialization strategy. In Latvia, the smart specialization was super influential in all political planning documents. We defined 5 industries we would like to concentrate. As you can see, you can describe all industry, all academia and economy through these sectors. And I remind you, as I mentioned before, we take the horizontal approach because we don't want to shape business, we want to enable business and to allow businesses to decide what they want to do and to really quickly respond to global tendencies. So as you can see, all these 5 sectors are very much linked to the space sector. So bioeconomy, here we can speak about Earth observation, biomedicine and biotechnologies. Life support systems would be very strategic for us, smart materials, photonics engineering, the definition of space, smart energy mobility and ICT. And here we're going to invest also, most of governmental support funds will be structured along these five sectors. So here we'll see growth of human capital, user investments, and technologies. And as a small country, but still with resources, we very much welcome cooperation in terms of engineering and metalworking, because we can offer efficient and effective, cost-efficient capacities in engineering and metalworking because of our skilled and efficient workforce. Excellent logistics. We are right in the middle of, we even struggle to define whether we are Northern Europe or how, because we are right in the middle of everything. We have various institutions that prepare specialists and very important facilities for testing and assembly that I mentioned before. Again, space environment simulation facilities and just in general clean rooms. And several globally competitive companies with such capacities and environments. With that all, I just would like to highlight that Latvians have, again, a very modest nature. This is sometimes it's considered impolite to talk too good about ourselves. Well, I don't have a problem about this, thus this presentation. But in general, the nation is very welcoming international cooperation with all the capacities. So the purpose of this presentation was to just inform you about another country open for cooperation in space. And we have the Latvian Support Office, although all the information right here. That's it.
Thank you, Angelina. Very much appreciate your presentation. Thanks for sharing that with us today for excitement as well. And I mean, those are phenomenal updates. Again, me being myself personally from Baltic states, as I mentioned before, it makes me excited, happy, and proud also at the same time to see all these activities that are being currently conducted. I have a few questions here while we're still having a little bit of time available. Maybe you can talk about what are the primary industries driving Latvia's economic growth and development in the space industry, and what competitive advantages does the country possess in these areas? Thank you.
I guess the focus on really infrastructure, because they historically have been driving our competitiveness, and this historically we have been also strong in smart materials, engineering, photonics, and optics. These industries are growing both in non-space, but of course are transferring their technologies in space, because as I mentioned before, we don't really have space-based companies. We have companies that also use opportunities offered by the space sector. That's why this growth maybe is even faster this way, considering that the challenging growth of the space companies.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, just a few other questions. Which one of those? How does Latvia's space industry fit into the broader European and global space ecosystem? And maybe you can talk about the country's priorities and goals in this context.
I wouldn't say that we prioritize countries this country would like to cooperate with and does not. We have also the European Space Agency's policy at the center of our policy. So we do cooperate with them very closely. We listen to them. So if someone from the US offers us cooperation, or also we approach them and offer cooperation, we do this. Or Lithuanians, Estonians, actually we also revive the topic of this regional cooperation because the culture is very close, so we are friends there. So we look both locally, globally, quite often.
Perfect. And lastly, I have a question here in terms of the intersecting, because obviously there's all these different industries that space is kind of playing into as well. So maybe you can talk about intersecting with other sectors and how the space intersect with other sectors, for example, like economy or manufacturing, engineering, research and development as well.
I'd say, yes, we do see space not as an isolated industry. We see space as a supporter of our main industries. All the 5 sectors, for example, I mentioned to you. And my pain is, why do we talk, for example, about Earth observation data or navigation data, which is freely available to us just as the space sector? Earth observation is a digitalization tool, which is applicable in almost all sectors in the on the Earth. So answering this question, yes, space also helps us digitize to develop smart industries. So both in upstream, extra opportunity, and downstream, really a strong digitalization tool, and we do it both well, just as our neighbors and the whole world, because that's what you should do, right? Right now.